Welcome back, guys. How are we doing? Welcome to the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Tonight, we have a litany of topics that we're going to speak on, predominantly NFL topics. We also are hitting on Team Giannis and Team LeBron. We're going to speak on the NFL coaching carousel, some of the new coaches coming in for various teams. We've got one team that leads the NFC East in all-time division titles that is going to run it back with the same coaching crew, but it could be the last run for them with those faces. We've got some very prolific wide receivers linked to Big Blue. We're going to speak on if it's really possible that one or both of them could be obtained, as well as if it's going to be financially responsible with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones coming up for new contracts. We're going to speak on what's next for the Philadelphia Eagles given their cap situation. And also, due to some of these coaching carousel situations, we're going to speak on TB12 as well as AR12 to see what their immediate future holds for the 2023 season. With me is my co-host, Mr. Mike Zappy. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. It was a very emotional evening today with my daughter's playoffs and coming up short by 4 points in the semifinals. But, they played a hell of a game. I was happy for them. I was very proud of everyone, how they played. It's just a couple calls didn't go their way. But other than that, I'm ready to roll.
Oh, sorry to hear that, but congrats on a good season. We're going to start it up with Nathaniel Hackett to the New York Jets as their offensive coordinator. And the question being, does this signal a potential trade for four-time league MVP, Mr. Aaron Rodgers, taking a page out of his predecessor, the great Brett Favre? Is this history potentially repeating itself with the move to East Rutherford to join the Jets? I'll chime in on it. I certainly think it's possible. I think if somebody would ask me this, say, a few weeks ago when Green Bay was chasing that final playoff spot, I probably would have said no. But after really thinking about it and after really putting, my eyes on the Jets roster, what they need, what they've needed for quite some time, going back to even the Rex Ryan era, post Brett Favre, post Chad Pennington, post those characters. Yeah, it's quarterback. You insert a talent like an Aaron Rodgers on a team that has very youthful receivers that are doing great off the jump. You have a rookie that's going to be coming off of an injury, but very much could bounce back in Breece Hall. You've got the best cover corner in the NFL right now, who's only going to be in the second year, in Sauce Gardner, along with a pretty sturdy defense. And yes, indeed, I think the Jets are a Super Bowl caliber team if they add on Aaron Rodgers. And with limited time remaining in his career, and I honestly believe a disagreement in philosophy, probably with Coach LaFleur. The marriage started off well. I don't think it's as well as it could be now. And, you also got to account that this is an organization that has to, at some point, see what they got in Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers is not going to have a team like he had in Green Bay, say, in 2020 or in 2019. So, yes, I do believe that the run is over there, and I do believe that he would be open to coming to the big city. I actually do believe that.
Well, the first thing I think to myself is when I look at the Green Bay Packers of this past season, their offensive output, there was a big drop-off this year, and a lot of that had to do with two things. One, obviously, Devontae Adams is not there. And
Right.
Secondly, Nathaniel Hackett leaving as their OC to become the head coach of the Denver Broncos. So they ended up finishing this year, I think, around 18th in total offense, whereas when Nathaniel Hackett was there, one year they were 5th, another year they were 10th, another year they were 12th. They were always a pretty good offense, at least in the upper tier. So
Right.
I think the Jets bringing in a Nathaniel Hackett kind of signals to Aaron Rodgers like, hey, we're going all in for you. Here's a guy, his system.
Yeah.
Come on down, come join. We got a young receiver in Garrett Wilson that you're going to enjoy throwing the ball to. You know, and you talk about a great defense that's already there, and it's a young defense. They've got a young nucleus going on, and really the only thing that prevented that team from going from a 7-win team to a 10, 11, or maybe even 12-win team was the fact that they didn't have very good quarterback play, whether it was Joe Flacco, Mike White, or Zach Wilson, you know. So if you insert a guy like Aaron Rodgers, that automatically puts them up there in Super Bowl contention. So I mean, I know the Jets are open to doing it. Aaron Rodgers has already talked about he's willing to take or redo his contract. Everyone thinks that so he can stay there, and I think he's redoing his contract in order to help facilitate a trade, whether it is to the Jets or Raiders. I don't think it's going to be to an NFC team.
I don't think it's going to be to the Raiders either, because at his age, he wants to be around coaching that he wants to be around at this point.
Exactly. Yep.
And he's not going to want to wait a year for them to move on from McDaniels, find a new coach. He's getting old. He's approaching 40. So, yeah, the Jets make sense. And I actually do believe that when I look at these rosters, there's only one other team that potentially could trade for Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think they're going to do it based on the moves that they're already making and kind of tipping their hat that they're going to run it back, would be your team. If your team shook it up and made the kind of deal where they even dealt the Dak Prescott and some draft capital to Green Bay straight up for Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I could see something like that happening. But the Cowboys are not going to do that. The Cowboys are going to ride it out this year. We're going to hit on them in a little bit. But, yes, you insert Aaron Rodgers to this Jets team. Because we were flirting around with the fact that maybe Lamar could go there. But this is the home run if you get Aaron Rodgers. Lamar would be a decent consolation. And then after that, you're just looking for some form of stability, whether it's a Derek Carr or a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, and I think the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett kind of says that
it speaks for everything.
Yeah, that Lamar is not coming. It's
absolutely
the way I look
not.
at it, because
absolutely.
I'm not saying that Lamar and Russell are similar quarterbacks, but to some sort of level they are. And Hackett's system, you need a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers, not a Lamar Jackson, to run that offense. So
it goes without saying. The marriage makes sense. Yes, a Jimmy G could survive there, but the marriage makes sense if it's Aaron Rodgers. And I think it's safe to say that you and I both agree that this is probably going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Jets have the equity to do it. They have some young talent that they'd be willing to part ways with. They have everything there in place, and they have a great head coach in Robert Saleh. He's obviously a player's coach. That's all they need is a quarterback. Why not go get it? You have
the defensive-minded Saleh, who obviously you see what the Jets defense did this year, and now you bring in a Nathaniel Hackett who has a great relationship and understanding of the game, like-minded with Aaron Rodgers. It's a home run for the Jets should they do it. And I will say this, with the rise of the Giants, Brian Dable being a finalist for Coach of the Year. We'll find out if he wins. I think he will. Regardless of the case, it's going to be very interesting in that stadium, two teams sharing MetLife Stadium, and it's going to bring back the feeling, so to speak, of Christmas Eve 2011 when the Jets and Giants had an elimination game. Jets were coming off 2 AFC title game appearances. Giants were a few years removed from winning it all. Plaxico Burress comes out as the sole captain for the Jets to kind of play some mind games with his former teammates. And it was everything that you would want in a game. And what's interesting about it is Victor Cruz spilled onto the scene as an undrafted rookie in 2010, had a great preseason against those same Jets, 3 touchdowns, wearing number 3.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He unfortunately was not able to play in 2010. He got hurt later in the preseason. 2011, second year as a pro, but first year truly getting action. That was the breakout game. And similarly, those New York Jets had another great corner, Darrelle Revis, who's up for the Hall of Fame. So it's going to be very exciting to reignite both these teams, green and blue, in that stadium, considering that these are the two teams going into this year that had the same exact losing percentage since that wonderful Christmas Eve game which culminated in a giant Super Bowl run. But not long after that, both New York teams really did a nosedive. So it's cool to see that they are both coming back.
It's just wild too, because they both play each other next year also,
Yeah, for sure. The Giants are actually the home team in that. And I must admit, we have 9 road games next year, one less at home. I kind of wish that the Giants were the road team in that game because I always consider the road team as a free home game. But it's going to be exciting, and the Jets have won the last 2 against us. So it's going to be interesting. And speaking of making a return, it wasn't on the sidelines for all that long. Frank Reich headed to Carolina, the team where he originally was their first quarterback. Not for long, short-lived. Kerry Collins took over out of Penn State. By year 2, he was playing in an NFC championship against the great Brett Favre. That year was interesting, both Jacksonville and Carolina. Second year in existence, we're a game away from the Super Bowl. Both of them, unfortunately, lost. That would have been interesting. But I don't like this hire, and I just want to explain why. It's not that I don't think Frank Reich can't succeed. I think the man is a decent coach. But the reason I don't like this is because I feel that Steve Wilks, after taking over for Matt Rule, really had his guys playing at a decent level. They are a reason why the Detroit Lions missed the playoffs. And they are also a reason why the Seattle Seahawks had to sweat it out to the absolute end of the season to sneak into the playoffs. Carolina had some big wins against some quality teams down the stretch after going through a quarterback carousel between Baker Mayfield, PJ Walker, Sam Darnold. I think Steve Wilks did a hell of a job. And it kind of reminds me of the mistake that the Raiders made going into this year, getting rid of interim coach Rich Bisaccia for the hot coordinator who already failed once as a head coach, Josh McDaniels. I'm not saying Reich can't do well here. I just think that Steve Wilks, similar to what happened in Arizona, is getting another raw deal. And it's unfortunate because I think Steve Wilks is a very good coach, and I hope he lands on his feet sooner than later because I think he offers a lot to any team.
I don't like it. I agree with you. I just find it weird that how Frank Reich was with the Colts team that things didn't work out. They let him go. You bring in a Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday replaces Frank Reich.
Who's got his second interview coming up, by the way.
It blows my mind that he might actually get this job again. And when it was pretty clear that after that first game, he's long ways away.
Your point, I got some food for thought with regard to this Colts situation.
But, and then you overlook a Steve Wilks who actually did, like you said, a great job with lesser talent. This is
damn near won the division.
Exactly. And then that was without Robbie Anderson and
Correct.
CMC. It's like, I don't like it. I mean, obviously I wanted them to hire Kellen Moore.
Yeah, to get him off your hands.
But, it doesn't make sense. And it's going to bring up the whole argument again about black coaches in the NFL.
And the truth is, I got to say this is a glaring example of it, similar to Brian Flores. It seems like mediocrity, when it comes to white coaches, there is a little more patience attached to it than it has with black coaches. And I don't necessarily like to make these topics about race because I don't like to think that way. I always think it's best man or woman, for that matter, for the job.
Right.
But unfortunately, the numbers don't lie. Black coaches have not been given the same patience level as white coaches. And you even take a guy like a Mike Tomlin, who constantly has a winning season or a minimum 500 season. The man has won a Super Bowl. He's been to another. And it seems like even a guy like him, somehow under the radar, even though he has been such a prolific winner in Pittsburgh, and this is an organization that does not change coaches very frequently. They really are patient. They are the standard when it comes to patience, believing in the man you hire. Oddly enough, the Rooney family, the Rooney Rule, definitely needs some tweaking. I do think that the NFL needs to do a better job with hiring people of color, but at the same time, it has to be just better all the way around the board. Because if I were a black coach or a Latino coach or a Muslim coach or whatever have you, I would feel very insulted if I'm only getting hired because they have to do that check on the box. I think there has to be a happy medium where this can be taken more serious. And I hope that it does, because let me tell you, there's a lot of good black coaches out there that are not head coaches right now, and it's a little unacceptable if you ask me.
Yeah, and then you look at the way Lovie Smith was handled at the end of the season.
Yes, sir. Good point.
That's a big one where I thought the players played for him. Obviously, when you have a team with lack of talent, you're not going to win many games. But each week, the Texans showed up and played. They fought. They gave the Eagles a hell of a run.
And I want to piggyback this before I forget. You replaced Brian Flores, who, now granted, this is coming from Stephen Ross, so take the source as you will. He's not exactly known for his integrity these days. But I must say, excuse me, they pitched it that Brian Flores was a jerk, very conceited, blah, blah, blah. The man, 2 years in a row, got his team incredibly close to the playoffs. You replace him with Mike McDaniel. You also get Tyreek Hill. Yes, you make the playoffs. I get it. But when you look at, from integrity, I'm using that integrity word again, with some of the shenanigans that Mike McDaniel pulled on his watch with regard to Tua Tagovailoa, very shady business. And I think it makes Brian Flores, who oddly enough is in Pittsburgh along with Coach Tomlin, look a lot better after the fact. There is still an open lawsuit going on. We're going to see where that goes. And it's very rare that you would have an open lawsuit while you are actually still an employee of an NFL team. But this is a rare, unprecedented situation. And, it's not that I know anything more than anyone else. But what I will say is when it comes to an integrity-based level, Stephen Ross, hard man to trust. That's all I'm going to say. There's a lot more I could say. I'm going to leave it there. But I think we both share a similar sentiment that we would like to see more diversity, because at the end of the day, this is a league that is driven by some of the finest African-American athletes in the country. And to think that you don't have coaches, it just doesn't add up or feel right. This is everyone's game. And I want to see more diversity, bottom line.
Absolutely. Hey, I guess my question to you, Richie, is what exactly has Frank Reich done, with the exception of 2017 with Philadelphia?
Quite frankly, similar to Josh McDaniels in Vegas, once again, Cliff Kingsbury, another example, they gave him, that's where Steve Wilkes got screwed again, right. Hyper patience. These are coordinators. These are not necessarily head coaches. You take Nathaniel Hackett. I think it's great that he's going to the Jets, but I think it's great that he's going to do what he's meant to do. Some guys are not great coaches. Like I thought Byron Leftwich to a level got railroaded when they fired the wrong guy. Personally, I think they should have fired Todd Bowles, because I think he's the guy that's not head coaching material. Because I remember
he's a great DC.
That I will give him.
Yeah.
And I have no problem saying that. But certain guys are not meant to do the whole deal. A lot of people say, oh, how come Eric Bieniemy hasn't come out and this and that? Truth be told, although Eric Bieniemy is under Andy Reid's watch, what people seem to forget in Kansas City is that Andy Reid really does a lot more than people realize.
Yeah.
But to Bieniemy, I would like to see what he can do. But like anything else, it's me as an optimist to see if these things get better for African-American coaches, I'm kind of skeptical. I don't have the highest faith in it right now.
Give it, I guess, all we can sit here and say is there's still teams that need coaches and anything can happen. But we still have 4 teams in the playoffs right now vying for a Super Bowl bid that we might see some other guys like the OC from Philadelphia. He's going to get calls for sure.
I must admit that when you take Lovey for a year on a nose-diving team, he gets him to play hard, you can him. Wilkes, interim, canned. And the Flores situation, it's just not good. And, this is a game I love, but there's certain things about it I don't like. This is certainly one of them. We're going to try to flip it over to your squad now. The Cowboys are running it back. Former Super Bowl winning coach with the Green Bay Packers, Mike McCarthy's back. Kellen Moore, to a lot of Dallas fans' dismay, is also back. But this is the thing. The return of Dan Quinn, is it a sign that he could potentially be the next coach meaning 2024, or unless Jerry got pissed off next year, fired McCarthy? Yeah, right, which is a possibility because this is the final prove-it year, not just for Dak, not just for that crew, for that base of a team they put together. There are some big names that have been associated potentially going to the Cowboys. Yes, Odell's still a possibility. So is D-Hop. So is Brandon Cooks. But this is a team that coming off a tough loss, for lack of a better word, when you have the defense you have, this is a situation where Dallas fans are getting impatient because, like, you take my team, for instance. Yeah, we lost. We're not happy about that. Nobody's happy about losing no matter what the scenario. But when I look at the trajectory and the ceiling, we're going like that right now, where Dallas, not going down, not going up, they're kind of like in limbo. Because I think Jerry wants to know for sure that moving on from his quarterback, moving on from his head coach, or altering the future of who's the man that's going to take over, he wants to make sure it's right. And the only way to know it's right is that he's got to give them the last opportunity to succeed. And
and it's weird too, because you take the comments that Jerry made yesterday about him wanting Mike McCarthy to coach as long as Tom Landry did.
That's a bunch of bullshit.
This is the best salesman out there. He knows how to trick everybody. Whenever I hear something come out of Jerry's mouth, I don't believe a damn thing he says. But
that's
as far as
thing. But sometimes that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. But as far as Dan Quinn goes, there's three things I look at here with him. Number one, I don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to go just take any coaching job. I think he wants the right opportunity to go and take the head coaching.
I think he wants to be the head coach.
Yeah, I think. Well, and that's what leads me to.
Why do you think McDaniels hung on so long in New England? But then when he finally realized that he couldn't outlast Belichick, he said, "Okay, I got to try this again."
Yeah, and well, when I look at Dan Quinn, and the reason why I think he wants to stay there, it's because of one name, and that's Micah Parsons. I think Dan Quinn genuinely loves the kid like it's his own son.
But it's similar to an aspiring Bill Belichick. Let's take it back. 1980s. It's similar to a situation like that where you're a new coach in the NFL. You're under the tutelage of the great Bill Parcells, and you get this kid, Lawrence Taylor, who could really write your ticket to head coaching jobs down the road. And let's be honest, Bill Belichick had a lot to do with that too in developing Lawrence Taylor as a player. And, he also had the Carl Bankses and the Harry Carsons, the Jim Burts, the George Martins, the Leonard Marshalls. He had some great players, but it takes a little bit of all that, because wherever you see a Micah Parsons, a Lawrence Taylor, a Mike Singletary, the list goes on and on, you look at some of the unsung guys that are on those defenses and you're like, damn, man. These guys really did have some great talent around them. But Dan Quinn's in a great position because he's the least – his seat is not even remotely hot. No. If anything, there's a button on it that's going to, push him up.
No, yeah, and I think it was on full display in the divisional game against the Niners.
Yes, sir. It's not all bad. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not. And I like – when you talk about Dallas' defense, they have a lot of key players. And I said Michael Parsons, but then you look at the second-round pick in Sam Williams, a guy that is a mirror image of Mike Parsons.
Yeah, exactly. Guys that you could develop.
And it's, but then when I flip it to the other side with Kellen Moore, it's one of those that, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm happy about it, but I'm also upset about it because, one, I'm happy about it because our offense does flow really well whenever Dak is in there at quarterback. However, when it comes to the big games, Kellen Moore, like I've said it many times, he outcoaches himself and he goes to a very basic offense where, he's not having the receivers go in motion. It's the same first down play, I formation, 21 dive, that type of thing.
And if you're going to do that, you've got to at least switch up the vocal calls, because the 49, you're basically playing into the 49ers' hands in that scenario. And there's been other games where this has happened.
Yeah, there is. But with the one thing I will say that I'm intrigued at what Dallas is doing is the fact that they're not bringing back a lot of assistant coaches. Leon Lett's gone. And I was actually surprised that he's gone. Our linebackers coach is gone, which is I'm over here sounding the alarm like, hey, Sean Lee, bring him in. He would be a great linebackers coach.
I
Because
tend to agree.
I think he's going to have DC be a
I felt
DC one day.
that he had the qualities of a coach when he was still playing.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's Joe Philbin, another guy that's not back, our offensive line coach. So
Green Bay Packers connection to Mike McCarthy.
Exactly. And so I think Mike McCarthy, Jerry gave him more power. So it's good.
He wants to have every reason that if this don't work out, that he'd be like, "Hey, buddy, I gave it to you. Goodbye."
Yeah, and that's it. And then
I've seen Jerry. Jerry has been the owner of that team since I was a child.
Yeah.
So I think I've been around long enough. And I always make this analogy because it's the truth. Jerry Jones is football's version of George Steinbrenner.
That's what he is.
And that's his boy. That's his boy. Like in his office, he has a picture of the boss. He admired that dude.
He did.
And I know they had many a good conversation in their day.
Yeah, so I think it's a good offseason for Dallas. Obviously, they still need to make some player movements as far as who they're going to bring back. Are they going to go after certain players, things like that? But the good thing is it tells me three things with Dak. A, they're not going to do anything with him. He's going to play this year, and they're going to move away from him next year.
It's very similar to what Jones dealt with this year.
Yeah. And then B,
Daniel
they're
Jones,
going to
listen.
No, yeah, I know you're. And then B, they're going to I guess extend him to lower the cap hit this year.
Correct.
Or, they flat out they can't necessarily trade him this year because of the guaranteed money this year. And if they go trade Dak and bring in an Aaron Rodgers, they'd be in cap hell. So there's no way they can do it. They have to kind of ride with this.
It would have Los Angeles Rams written all over it. They would really have to get creative to dance through the rain on that. But I guess this is what I see, and this is way too early to have too much of an opinion. I think that what's going to ultimately happen is that you're going to see too much of what you already don't like on that side of the ball. Offense, I'm talking about. Your defense is your defense. Your defense, I think Bill Parcells said it best, former Cowboy, former Giant coach, former Patriot coach, former Jet coach, when he said, I don't think Dak is like that next level guy, elite, but he's good enough to win a Super Bowl if you have the right football philosophy. And I think that's where we're at. Like he's not Troy Aikman. He's not Roger Staubach. And quite frankly, I don't think he's Tony Romo either. But I do think Dak has value. And if you run the correct offense, yes, he can hoist a Lombardi. I just don't think it's going to happen here. But I do think Dan Quinn is going to get you back to that plateau. I've been saying it for a while. I think he's the guy. Time will reveal that. Onto my team. D-Hop, OBJ to Big Blue ? Can the G-Men swing this while still retaining running back Saquon Barkley, quarterback Daniel Jones? More importantly, by the way, I do think they could swing this. But more importantly, I would have to say, would this make them a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Even if they get one of those two guys.
I mean, the quick answer is yes. This is a team that they made the divisional round of the playoffs. They kind of had a roller coaster of a season. Started off hot, 6-1, come back down, and then finish strong. Obviously, not the way you want it to end, going into Philadelphia and just getting the lights beat out of you.
Yeah.
But then when you look at some of the reasons why that happened, it was the lack of talent at the skill positions. I mean,
you can get away with it when you play a middle of the road defense like a Minnesota. But when you're playing an elite top 1, 2, 3 to 5 defense, Philadelphia checks the boxes on that. Quite frankly, if you don't have a receiver who can stretch the field, you're not giving your other playmaker or two playmakers, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, in that order, because this year Daniel Jones was the most important New York Giant. Watch the tape, and it will reveal that. Isaiah Hodgins, nice little find, and a guy that I want back. Richie James, nice little draft pick late. Going back to his Niner days. Guy has value, and the guy has actually become better. on his football journey now with the Giants. It really depends. I don't think Odell is going to be as pricey as many believe, but I do think that he would benefit immensely from coming back to the Giants financially and other ways, business ventures, being back in the city that he loves. I do believe that it makes sense. D-Hop it's a possibility because I do think that the Giants have a reasonable situation where they will probably part with a second-round pick, maybe a fifth, maybe a fourth, but you're getting a future Hall of Fame wide receiver.
Honestly, I don't think it's going to be a second. As the more and more I evaluate it, I think it's going to be a first because Marquise Brown last year was a first-round pick. A.J. Brown last year was a first-round pick. Amari Cooper, the dumbest trade I've ever seen.
I know. That was bad.
But all the other wide receiver trades were pretty much first-round picks.
And I'll be honest, when you're considering that we're picking at 25th, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you should be. Absolutely, because you got to ask yourself, will a Jackson Smith-Jigba come in and actually make an impact right away? No.
Dude, he's not even going to be there at 25.
Yeah, and will Addison from USC?
I'll be honest with you.
There's no rookie receiver that'll come in right now. If we
keep that draft pick, the trajectory of what's in this particular draft, I think the Giants would be best suited to go get them another edge rusher, given the health of Ojulari, or go get a linebacker.
What would be interesting here, this is what's going to be interesting for the Giants, and I've been saying it for a while now, is and I know you say he's coming back, but I have to give you the other side of things.
Yeah,
if Saquon Barkley is not re-signed, and if you have Bijan Robinson sitting there at 25, there's one thing that the Giants have to ask themselves. Are they going to let Bijan Robinson drop to 26 to Dallas? Because Dallas is going to swoop him up right away. Or are they going to go take him? And that's the predicament the Giants are going to be in if they.
But I'll throw one at you. But I'll throw one at you here that could make you go like this, a little scratch your head and be like, "Oh, damn! What if we go with the plan of making sure that Barkley has a home in New York for the next 4 years? And what if we draft Bijan Robinson anyway? Because if you track our history and you track championship caliber New York Giants football, it was always running back by committee. Ahmad Bradshaw, Brandon Jacobs, take it to the 90s. You had Otis Anderson. You had Rodney Hampton. You sprinkle in a little Dave Meggett. Take it back a little further. You still had O.J. Anderson. And you also had Joe Morris. You have Rodney Hampton.
I think you would be more
Barber and Rondane.
Yeah, and honestly, I like where you're going with this.
And no, they're not
going to.
They're not going to double down in that investment.
No, I think you maybe see if a Jahmyr Gibbs is there in the second round out of Alabama, then you go draft him to team him up with Saquon, but you don't waste that first round pick on another running back.
You know would be kind of a gangster move if the Giants draft him to trade him to Dallas. That would be some funny shit.
Anything's possible, but hey, I will say this much.
They'll be like, "Hey, when you guys got cute a few years ago and you screwed everything up for us, we were going to go draft Devontae Smith." But actually, we could both blame that, and the world could blame that on Denver
or Carolina.
Yeah, both of them.
J.C. Horn, J.C. Horn, and Patrick Surtain, and
let me tell you something. Well, if one of those two organizations lay off cornerback, the Giants would have Devontae Smith right now.
Yeah. And Michael Parsons might be an Eagle.
So
it's still another guy. It's still another guy they liked.
Yeah, it still would have sucked. You know what? Let's just leave it alone. It could have been worse.
Could have been a lot worse. But no, I think the Giants, they have some questions. We've been talking about this now a couple of episodes. But they have the opportunity to make the moves. And if you can go out there and trade for a D-Hop, sign an OBJ, put Richie James into the slot, and then also have Isaiah Hodgins there as your number 4.
And not to mention, this gives time for Wan'Dale Robinson to heal.
Yeah, oh, God, I forgot all about Wan'Dale Robinson.
But I did think about this, too. Hypothetically, of course. If the Giants were willing to commit, like, say, a 2-3 year deal to OBJ, then you figure probably a 4-year deal to D-Hop. Wan'Dale could be a guy that they actually trade to Arizona along with some draft capital for D-Hop. I could see that too.
Ooh, I don't know about that's a hard one for me because of what Wandale brings in the slot.
I do
That's,
understand that, but how many receivers can you have on the field at one time? I do think that at some point that becomes a question too. And then, who else do we have that can play the slot? Actually, Odell, very much so, can man that down along with Richie James. How highly do the Giants really believe in Richie James? That's also a thing.
And the Giants have time to maneuver themselves and do everything right because if they're sitting there at 25 and they re-signed Saquon, if it took a second round pick to get a D-Hop and they signed OBJ, and you can look at, all right, well, best player available, and if what's his name out of Utah, the tight end, or Michael Mayer is standing there,
I just can't see Michael Mayer dropping that far. That's a no-brainer.
Well, he's dropping. It's funny. He's dropping on teams' boards. And granted, we haven't had the combine yet, but now he's not even considered the best tight end anymore. And
I don't care what
blowing my mind.
No, he's enough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's tight end university, bro.
Yeah, he is. I believe me. I've been advocating for Michael Mayer to Dallas. I think him or Bijan, and I'm going to be the happiest guy. But it's like the Giants have time. They don't have to rush anything. But the one thing they have to be sure they do first is re-sign those two players before they go focus on getting everyone else.
Good friend of the show, Sergio Rodriguez, has been on the opposite side of the fence with me. It's not so much that he feels that the Giants aren't going to re-sign Saquon. He actually feels that they shouldn't.
And, it's crazy, too, because, well, you see what other teams that have re-signed their running backs, my Cowboys, for example, the Panthers with CMC.
It's such a tough decision because history shows certain things, but at the same time, not a lot of guys in history are a Saquon Barkley or a Christian McCaffrey, and they are in proximity close to each other. So it's a tough decision either way. Quite frankly, knowing the history of my team and knowing how they value character, face of a franchise, so many other things, that is a huge reason why I am very confident that they get this done. And no, I don't think Saquon's going to get the McCaffrey money. Quite frankly, I'm not even sure if he's going to make as much as Zeke was, but I do think that he'll get his 14.5, give him the 30 guaranteed, 14.5 per, maybe 13.8 per, just under 14. But the point is, if you give him around 30 guaranteed, you got him. I do believe that to be true. And I also think that it means something to him to play there. And that always helps because in this generation.
And he's from the Bronx, so.
Yeah, he's from the Bronx, played in PA, loves the Turnpike rivalry. Yeah, there's a lot to it. What's next for Philly, speaking of the Turnpike? Their season hasn't ended, but we always think ahead. They are picking 10th in this year's draft, which is remarkable when you consider the record they have. Will Harry Roseman pull off more cap miracles? They're only looking at about $10 million in cap space next year. You did mention off air that you thought Brandon Graham could be a candidate for a guy to cut.
Yeah. There's 4 players on this team that I'm going to see Harry Roseman turn this $10 million of cap space into $60 million. It's going to be by restructuring Darius Slay, restructuring A.J. Brown, by restructuring Lane Johnson, by cutting Brandon Graham, and just by cutting Javon Hargrave, that frees up $40 million right there. So
I don't know what the two old guys, Linval Joseph and Sue, are making, but quite frankly, I think this is rental action. They're not going to be back next year.
No, they're not.
Because at 10, they're probably going to draft a defensive lineman, and I have a feeling I know who it's going to be. But
I think it's going to be an edge rusher personally, because it might be a defensive tackle. I think it's going to be whoever's there available. But the Eagles, in my opinion, it pains me to say this, are in great shape. And I've talked to you about this off air.
It reminds me a little bit of when you guys were the ones that had the dynasty in the 90s, but the Giants were still punching away. The Redskins and the Eagles were still punching away. It could be their time all the way like that. But what keeps me optimistic is, I posted it as a topic on my show, and I'm actually going to hit on this now with Bart Scott's comments about Jalen Hurts. Basically saying that he's not a superstar and he doesn't belong in the breath of an Allen, Mahomes, or Burrow. Those are the 3 he highlighted. And I understand. that over the course of football history, guys that are considered running quarterbacks, or maybe not the most developed passer, they tend to get loopholed. And yes, there is validity to why that is a statement and a belief and sometimes factualized. But I must say this. Number one, you have the best offensive line in football that's going to continue to be in there, that window of being the best for the next 2 to 3 years. Got to give him that. Jalen has played within himself, but don't get it mistaken. Just because the man's playing within himself doesn't mean that he can't do more. You've seen what happened with Patrick Mahomes a couple of years ago and with Josh Allen this year. There is a such thing as burnout. There is a such thing as doing way too much. And I believe this year, you track it back to that elbow injury before the Minnesota game when everybody thought Case Keenum was going to get the start. Josh Allen has not been the same player. Then you factor in the Dable effect and wonder if that's another variable that could be affecting him with the turnovers. I still expect Josh Allen to be in the mix for multiple MVP awards, but I must say this. You brought up a decent enough point. And I didn't agree with you, but it doesn't matter if I agree with you. You still brought up a good point. When is he going to start getting the heat that Dak's getting, being that Joe Burrow keeps doing this, jumping over him, and also beating the face of the league, Patrick Mahomes? And now you have Hurts arriving, I got to say this. Let Josh Allen not qualify for an AFC championship at minimum next year. He's going to be hearing about it. And
it's getting harder and harder for him to do that too.
Indeed, and it gives you the Jim Kelly vibes. It gives you the Dan Marino vibes to a level.
Gives me the Phillip Rivers vibes.
Oh, poor guy. And I tell you, it's almost like the media was trying to train us to tell us Josh Allen's that guy. And I'm not saying he's not, but I think it's a classic example that it takes more than just one guy to get it done. And, Buffalo's defense was screwed up. I still feel even in the running game, they have not done enough. You could call Hurts a running quarterback all you want, but at the end of the day, you're getting contributions from a three-headed monster over there at running back.
And that's the one team to watch out for.
Similarly to
Saquon.
I'll tell you, I'm gonna give you an example as to why I don't believe he would be the guy for Philly, and more so Josh.
No, not for Philly, for Buffalo.
That I could see, but I still
Saquon of Buffalo, that fixes a run game right now. Him and James Cook together. Woo.
Yeah, I still don't see it though. I actually think if anything, they would probably bring in Odell before Saquon for their need to have just another dynamic receiver alongside Diggs. I think that he might be the guy. Time will tell. Speaking of time, Tom don't have a lot of it left. Is it time to hang it up? Is it time? What dude? To hang it up or to keep hanging on? This is something I'm noticing with Tom Brady. He doesn't have that same interest level that he did in 2020, when he first left New England, made it official, made a decision after throwing the final pass of his Patriot career, an interception for the score to his current teammate, Logan Ryan. Okay, let's talk about the guys that make sense. Obviously, you have the Raiders because of the McDaniels connection. Okay, that makes sense to a level. Okay, New England, nostalgia, history, the final curtain call, whatever you want to call it. Yes, there is a such thing to that. Now, I'm going to say the 49ers for one reason and one reason only. While Brock Purdy is undefeated, they have a window to win now. And if they get their doors blown off on Sunday to Philly, and then they start really overanalyzing, he can't do this and he can't do that, I could see them making a play on Brady while still keeping Purdy because he is on his rookie deal. Go trade Trey Lance. Jimmy G will find a home somewhere else. Because Brady literally doesn't have much time. And what is his one thing that he hasn't done? He hasn't played for his favorite team. He did grow up a Niner fan, but I still think that's a pipe dream. I don't think he's going there. I'm going to say this, and I might get laughed at for saying this. I think Tom Brady's staying in Tampa.
Oh, I think he's staying in Florida.
You got him going to Miami.
But I think Miami makes sense.
Potentially, but I think my fear with that is from the credibility level of the Stephen Ross thing, and there was some other stuff that included Brady with that. But, I could see it. I mean, he has the weapons. He has a pretty dynamic play caller in Mike McDaniel. Wow, Brady in
Just
South
think,
Beach.
just think about the days when Brady was owning the league and he had receivers that were running quick slants
But I do
or
want
it
to
was a
ask you
quick
this.
throw.
I do want
Ask
to
me.
ask you this. Do you think that this hurts his bigger legacy by joining a division rival and leave, in that regard, like playing in the NFC doesn't really screw with Patriot fans and his fan base and this and that. But do you think it's be great for TV? But
I I'll
but
say
do
this:
you do you
his
think that this smears it a little, like when Favre put on the purple?
not if he brings in his eighth ring. If he gets an eighth ring out of it, then no, obviously not, because now we're talking about a quarterback that's won a Super Bowl for three different teams. But
Yeah, that's remarkable.
in all honesty, I think he's hurting his legacy just by continuing to play year in and year out. A lot of people are going to blame the fact that he went through a divorce this year, and that probably affected a lot of him mentally.
But but then, quite
But
frankly, the decision was already made because a
yeah,
big key contributor to the divorce was that his wife, by all accounts of people close to the situation, feel that she was snowed with his fake retirement and feels that he essentially chose football over his family.
well, I mean, he spent 60 days with them and realized I can't do this.
Do
Not
you know that
yet.
before making this decision, he read Jimmy Johnson's book?
Yeah.
Oh God, I love Jimmy Johnson though, and you know what's funny? Jimmy said this on a Fox telecast late last season. I think it was during last year's playoffs that he was very close to drafting Michael Strahan. So we always talk about how
Yeah.
history could have, and Strahan has Texas roots, military kid, but Texas roots. We're gonna flip it over to the hardwood before we get out of here. We've got Team Giannis going up against Team LeBron. Our all-star rosters are set. I want to raise my hand quickly and complain. Listen, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson. I I could live with Randle not getting elected into this game, but Jalen Brunson has just been such a godsend to my New York Knicks. And if we can figure out how to play at home, man, oh man, because we're coming off a very emotional victory over the great Boston Celtics team that is a legitimate contender to be in the NBA Finals for a second consecutive year. Knicks have the second best winning percentage on the road in the Eastern Conference, but they are losers at Madison Square Garden. They have a losing record, and it's like, good Knicks, bad Knicks. Good Knicks go out and beat the Celtics on the road. Good Knicks win an overtime battle against Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers, or a late battle, I should say. But then you flip it, and this is a team that looks flat against the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors. Like, they are Jekyll and Hyde. I just want to say my little piece on my two Knicks that didn't get in. I'm okay with it. Julius Randle is picking up his game lately, though. I must say that. But do you like these selections?
Well, I'm going to hit on the main topic of the starting fives that were announced for Team Giannis and LeBron. First of all, how can you name LeBron James the team captain when you have Jokic over there, who is the back-to-back MVP in the NBA right now?
To answer,
ooh, that's a bad omen right there. That's a bad omen right there.
How did that happen? Wow.
You just mail it in now. Saquon is gone. Daniel Jones is gone. You guys are gonna, Giants done.
I'm sorry, Rodney.
No, that's my bigger complaint is how they continue to name LeBron the team captain when there are players I think that are more deserving. Now, as far as the starters go, I'm going to say this much. There's two names that come to mind right away, one for the East, one for the West, that I believe should have been named starters and warrants. The first one on the East is Joel Embiid. I think he should have been the starter over Kevin Durant. And the other one is Ja Morant. I don't know how Ja Morant was not named the starter. And I love Steph Curry. But Steph Curry has already missed some time this year. And I get it. It is all about, the fan votes. It's all that's the big thing. But still, it annoys me that players like Ja Morant have to take a back seat when they are still outperforming their counterpart.
Speaking of John Morant, his father, the altercation almost that turned physical, which Hall of Fame NFL tight end Shannon Sharp
didn't want that smoke.
Yeah, but check this stat out. They're 0-5 since that almost altercation. So, I saw a funny meme today saying how that they're really afraid of Shannon Sharp and how he got in their heads.
They got it there. Well, hey, I got to give it to Shannon, because if you heard me talking crap right now about LeBron James, that is LeBron's biggest bodyguard, hands down. I mean, that guy will probably take a bullet for LeBron.
Hey, friends are friends, and he's definitely a good one to LeBron, and I'm sure it's reciprocal because it does look like when LeBron's friends with people, he really is. But I hated what I saw, but it seems like one thing I got to give Sharp credit for lately, between the Skip Bayless thing, between that, is that he's becoming such a praised individual for showing so much restraint in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I don't think this is a man that's going to back down from a fight, but he's certainly not looking to put fire on flame. He's looking to be the dude that takes the high road, because I wholeheartedly believe that he knows the Van damage he could do if it really goes in that direction.
The guy sneezes, first of all. He needs to stop going to the gym so damn much. I know he's got back into lifting, and you can tell because ever since last year to today, you could tell he swelled up a little more.
Yeah.
But, it's like, come on, man, you're in your 50s now. Like, what are you trying to prove? We get it. You've always been a big guy. But, the whole, that is funny. I didn't realize that about the Grizzlies, that is since that incident that they have not won a game.
No, it's pretty funny. But to answer your question about why LeBron is given this benefit, it's similar to Michael Jordan being voted in to start in his final season with the Washington Wizards. It's not LeBron's final season, but it's a historic one in the sense that it's year 19, in the sense that, another 19-year player, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he's going to jump his record, blah, blah, blah. I want to just mention that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in the NBA Finals in his 19th year, not frolicking around in some play-in tournament, which didn't even exist back then. If you were 10th, you weren't going to the playoffs. Before we get out of here, there's one other thing that's on my mind with regard to the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me get Bart Scott out of the way quickly. I think it's a challenge to Jalen Hurts. I don't think it's a diss, but I do think that as far as the Bengals basically calling it Burrowhead. I mean, can you ask for any more motivation and bulletin board material? And listen, I get it. The man is 3-0 against Mahomes. All games, 3 games decided by a field goal. And we broke down all the reasons as to why each team could win or each team could lose. We talked about it's Mahomes' health with his mobility. It's the Bengals' ability to playing a better pass rush. Can they keep Burrow clean enough? Clean enough meaning don't let him get sacked 5 times, only 4. There's a win-loss percentage behind that. But I just, between the two Kelseys and between the Andy Reid, Philadelphia connection, it just feels right that it's going to be Eagles and Chiefs. I mean, I'd be happy as hell if the 49ers beat the Eagles on Sunday. I'm just smart enough to say that it ain't going to happen. I think Philly's winning the Super Bowl. I'm going to just say that now, and it pains me to say that as you see everything behind me. But okay, so in Bart Scott's case, I don't think he's really trying to screw with Jalen. I think he's challenging him. But in I made the comment about why does Josh Allen keep getting these passes, and then you kind of brought it up, and then I caught myself saying the same thing, and things change, and it's a "what have you done for me lately" league. A year ago, Daniel Jones was a bum. A year later, they're like, "Yo, what's this guy worth?" Hey, Trevor Lawrence is terrible. This guy sucks. He's a college enigma, and now look at him with a real coach. So it's just, and now Dak has to answer questions. When a year ago, 2 years ago, they're like, "Damn, he's tearing it up."
I'll say this much. First, I'm going to hit on Burrow and the Bengals. if they go into Kansas City once again, which I firmly believe they will, and win that game, whether it's by 1, 3, 10, 14, whatever.
Get the win, bottom line.
Get the win. That is Burrowhead. I'm sorry. I'm going to leave it at that. But
It's hard not to at that point.
But as far as like Aaron Rodgers going to Dallas, he never loses there. You know,
He sure does.
That's what it's building into. But as far as Bart Scott's comments, I agree to him to an extent, and I would say I think he used the wrong words in regards to Jalen Hurts.
Thank you.
Because when I think of quarterbacks, I think that there's 2 elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're both playing each other on Sunday night, in Mahomes and Burrow. I think they, hands down, are the face of the NFL now. But now when you say the word superstar quarterback, Jalen Hurts is a superstar quarterback because of his ability to run the ball, his ability to run the offense the way he does, the same way like a Lamar Jackson, who is not an elite quarterback by any means.
But he's a superstar.
Exactly. Yes. So I don't
Deshaun
agree
Watson
with him
is not elite right now, but he's a superstar.
He's a superstar.
He was elite in 2020.
I think he used the wrong terminology, and he should have instead said
defensive guy.
He had Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are right there with each other. They're superstar quarterbacks, but they're not elite. Because if you take away the running aspect from Josh Allen, he's not the same quarterback.
The message is on a bigger level, though. Whether he used the word superstar, elite, whatever, the bottom line is he excluded him from those other 3. And this is my whole point. And this is my winning point. No matter what I think of Jalen Hurts, no matter what you think, no matter what he thinks, it is just as much his year 2 as it is Joe Burrow's last year. You know what I'm saying? So it's only fair.
He's got a bias towards the Eagles. Let's be real. I mean, he was the only guy on that panel that selected the 49ers to win.
I mean, I'm not hating the guy for hating the Eagles, because I hate the Eagles. But after being burned last week and after being burned at different times of the season, I'm starting to just cave and say, you know what? I hate these bastards, but they're really good.
Yeah, and I've done it, and I do it all the time. 2017, I sat there and said, no one is going to beat this.
But I will say this. Earlier in the year, meaning like a month ago, when I was starting to doubt them, it wasn't so much about fan hat or fan affiliation. Everybody knows I love the Giants, and they're our biggest rival. It was more because of the fact that after such a rampant start, and it's been proven, it's happened a lot over the course of the last decade or so. Green Bay 15-1, New England undefeated until they weren't. The Steelers were 11-0 a few years back, and they had an early out. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And even in week 18 against my Giants in that backup game, they didn't look that sharp. But I do not remember who said it after the game. It may have been Collinsworth. I honestly do not recall what telecast. It was on Fox, but it's not hitting me. Actually, I think it was Jimmy Johnson, come to think of it. He basically said the bye week did them all the good that they needed.
Yeah. It was.
And in some cases, that's not true. But for this particular case, it was.
It was.
And I mean, I was proven right on some levels. I said the biggest matchup in the game was going to be Dexter Lawrence against Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce won that matchup with flying colors. And, I think it's a painful lesson, but it's a growing pain for the New York Giants. And in the end, and I said it before the game, we're going to be better for this one way or the other. Bright future ahead. But, your team and my team each were one game away from playing for the final game in the NFC, so nothing to be ashamed of there. We both had pretty cool seasons.
Yeah, I don't care about it.
And our first season, essentially we've been together on this show since the first Sunday of the NFL season, a little bit before that as well. But there's a different energy and vibe when we're talking about football as opposed to any other sport we cover here. So, I go back and I'm like, wow, Zap, we've done a lot of work around here since 9/11, the Giant opener in Tennessee, and just looking at some of the stuff we've accomplished here. So, I just want to take a minute out and say, thanks, man. This has been a really cool football journey for the season. We're running out of time. I apologize for knocking down Rodney Hampton. He's up. He's not cracked. He's a tough guy. Until next time, I'm Richie. He's Zappy, and it is really cold in the Sunshine State. It's actually snowing over there in Texas. We are out. Enjoy the game.